Good afternoon, everybody. Glad you guys are able to join us as we start to let people fill in the room. I appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Joining me tonight with two great guests. My name is Will Jones, the former head basketball coach at North Carolina A&T, and really have two really good guests tonight with us on my first uh, episode of Logos and Polos podcast. Really, the intro to a space that I want to give to coaches and CEOs, business. Just not just for coaching, and and so tonight I have Coach Ashley Howard, former head coach at LaSalle University, and Coach Lavall Jordan, the former head coach at Butler University. Two awesome head coaches, two of the best in the game, two lifers in the game of basketball, great fathers, husbands, coaches, leaders, and mentors. I'm really cutting them short in terms of some of the things that they do, the great men they are. Um, but they've also had an opportunity to be really good. Their resume in basketball, a couple of really uh, NCAA tournament appearances, conference championships, and both of them had a chance to compete at the highest level and compete in our games, national championship games. So our guests tonight are definitely a treat for everybody on the call. And so, just to give you a little bit of background in terms of the name of this podcast, Logos and Polos. About 5-6 years ago, 2015, I believe, I came up with this slogan when I was out of coaching, and I realized that I was sitting home trying to figure out what's next, and I've been a college coach at that point, I think, for 12 years, and I still had all the skills and all the things that relationship skills, recruiting skills, people skills. The only thing I didn't have was a logo on my polo anymore. I didn't have anything to represent, a university to represent. And a lot of us go through that, whether that's in coaching or in business or jobs. You tie your professional resume to your personal identity. And sometimes you realize that you don't know who you are outside of that logo you're representing. And so that's what the background of this podcast came from. Who are you outside of your job title? And so, again, when you're talking to your friends, this is just not for basketball coaches. This is for CEOs, coaches. I'm going to have different guests come on, psychiatrists, at all, and people at all levels that can chime in and try to help us make sure that we protect our self-worth in terms of knowing who we are. And so, with that being said, I'm going to kind of break the icebreaker with Coach Ash and Coach Jordan, and we're going to get this thing started. Coaches, you guys there?
We're here, man.
Good. Coach Jordan, you available? You good? You ready to go? I'll probably jump on here in a minute. I'll start with Ash. Ash, how many different logos in your career have you represented so far, man? Give us a little bit of background about how many different polos you've worn in your career.
Man, so it's been five, but the beautiful thing is that the colors have been pretty consistent, right? So the polo has changed, the logo changed, but you know what I'm saying. I can still wear my white and blue Air Force Ones to match them all. You know what I mean? So my footwear stayed consistent. But I started off as a grad assistant at Drexel University where I played. Then I had a chance to to be an assistant. Well, actually, then I fresh out of college, I worked for the Hoop Group organization. Right, it's they host camps, tournaments, different basketball events, clinics. So that was my first job fresh out of college. So that was really technically like my first polo. Then I went to LaSalle as an assistant coach. back to Drexel as an assistant coach, Xavier as an assistant, Villanova as an assistant, and then back to LaSalle as the head coach most recently.
And so you got a lot of navy blue in your closet, is what you're telling me.
Man, it's all navy blue, man. I have to intentionally mix it up a little bit.
You said five, coach.
Yeah, if you count the hoop group, because we got polos for we got polos with the hoop group logo on them too, man.
Sure. I went back and counted. I've had 9 different logos that I've represented, and they go from I had a lot of green going on early, Jacksonville and Florida A&M, and Navy with Charleston Southern, and but I really liked the black and the red I had at Northwest Florida State when I was in JUCO. I don't know why I really liked that black and red. When I walked in gyms and I was able to put that black and red on, I really felt good in those colors. And so my second thing was in terms of that logo, which one of those logos and those color schemes for you? Obviously, all of them were navy blue, so that's the only one that you kind of got used to.
Yeah, I got used to the navy blue. So when I was at LaSalle and Drexel, they're both navy blue and gold, right? And then Xavier and Villanova, navy and white. Xavier gives you a little bit of gray in there, and Villanova we mix up that powder blue a little. You give them a little powder blue vibe in there. But yeah, man, it's all really a blessing, man, to have the opportunity to wear the polo. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that when you're not in the game and 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 you reflect just on all the different places you've been in your journey, just the fact that you have an opportunity to stick around the game that you love, make an impact on the lives of young people, and do that for a living. It's been a blessing, man. So all of those different logos to me, man, just represents, just stops along the journey for me and lives that I was able to touch.
For sure. Coach Jordan just plugged in with us. Coach Jordan, man, we're talking about the logos, man, and how many logos have you had a chance to represent in your long college career so far?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I guess player and coach 7. That would be Butler. I started out, I played at Butler University, and then I went to play overseas and in the G League after that. And you're getting the team issue gear there. Got into coaching as director of operations, coming back to Butler, and then went from Butler to Iowa to Michigan, Michigan to Milwaukee in my first head coaching stint, and then circled back to Butler. So yeah, that was. Now I had more colors than ash. There's some black and gold in there a couple times. A little bit of maize and blue in there, and always been a little bit of blue in there. Red only once. That was when I was playing overseas. But yeah, there's been a few different colors, a few different stripes.
Which color did you like the best, Coach? Which one made you feel good?
You can't do that, Will. You can't do that.
Hey, Val, you had that Michigan going on, man. You had
can't
that
do
five.
that.
You had that 5-5 Michigan logo on your chest for a little while, man.
Yeah, I tell you what, when I got to Iowa, the colors popped. I said that as soon as I got the gold jumps off the black. And but then you get to Michigan and you have the maize and blue, and I always try to grab a maize or a gold shirt, so you can stand out in the crowd on the recruiting trail and have a little fun with it.
Oh, that's good. That's good, man. Well, we're going to jump to this next thing, and we're going to kind of combine this thing and flip it on the other side. Ash, tell me about a time in your career where you didn't have a logo to represent, and how did it feel being in that space?
Well, I mean, truth be told, man, this is my first time being in that space in my adult life, right? And And, you know, the one thing I appreciate the journey, right? I appreciate, you know, the opportunities that I got as a young coach to get into the business and have people pour into me and invest in me as a young coach and teach me the way. Guys like Bruiser Flint, and Dr. John Giannini, Jeff Arnold, Horace Owens, Chuck Martin, Tony Childs, guys that, you know, when I was a young coach, man, they really showed me the way, taught me how to move in the industry. You know, Brew, you know, he was my model. You know, I have an opportunity to be a student assistant for him and watch him build the Drexel program was transformational for me, because I saw somebody that looked like me, that was from my city, that, you know, played in the city of Philadelphia, that had worked his way up, right? And he showed me that, listen, man, like, yo, if you respect people, if you're good in honoring your relationships, and if you put your head down and grind, you can do this, right? So, you know, now I'm just in a period of reflection, just thinking about, you know, the how much the game has changed, because it's a completely different game today than it was when I first got in, and you know, I'm just learning to appreciate that and try to, you know, figure out, you know, when I get my opportunity to put a polo back on, you know, what will be the best way for me to make an impact, right? Because in the end, like we do this because we love being around kids. We love making an impact on their lives, and then everything else, in all honesty, like, you know, it's a byproduct of us pouring into young people, man. So I'm just reflecting right now, man, just super grateful for the, you know, the 18 years I had, you know, to be able to put the polo on and represent the different schools that I coached at.
Definitely, and I'm gonna stay with you for a second, Ash, and you know, now that, I mean, obviously you still have the opportunity to put a polo on, and you still have those skills that you had when you were wearing those polos and representing those u- universities that you worked at previously. Um, Talk to us about, though, you know, being who you are without that logo on your chest and without you representing that school. Talk about the identity of who you are.
Man, I'm a husband. I'm a father, son. I'm a friend. I'm probably a lot cooler now than I was when I had a polo on. You know what I mean? I get back to being myself, and you know, just being normal, man. A lot of times when you're a head coach, and particularly a black head coach, you know, you're constantly, you know, on, you know what I mean? And and in all honesty, at times, man, like, you look up and you say, man, like, I'm a completely different person than I was 10 years ago. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's cool to be a father, man, to be a husband. Um, you know, they keep me grounded. They keep things in perspective for me. That no matter, you know, how much I think, you know, other things are important, man. There's nothing more important than my fam, and watching my kids grow and getting this time that I get to spend with them, right? You know, it's just, you know, I went to my 4-year-old son, man. He's doing like little skills and drills at a little community center around in our neighborhood. Ordinarily, man, like, I may not have been able to make that on a Thursday night. I'll probably be somewhere recruiting, right? So, you know, to have the opportunity to enjoy this time with my family, I'm really taking advantage of it, man, and that's who I am at the end of the day. Without that polo on, man, I'm 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 a family guy.
For sure, and I think, you know, one of the main reasons, you know, this podcast is being started is because sometimes in what we do, our identity is literally, they try to make it our job title, and I think we need to be able to separate our identities, that we aren't just what our job title says we are. And so, Coach Jordan, talk to us a little bit about your career and in your times that you didn't have an opportunity to represent that a logo or institution?
You know, Will, is twice I would say, this being the third time where you have that feeling. I would say the first time when I was done with my playing career, played like I said overseas for a season, played in the D League for the season. So I was in Norway, in Bergen, Norway, with a club called the Ulriken Eagles, and then I played in Huntsville, Alabama, for the G League team called the Huntsville Flight back in the day. And then playing was done. You know, I made that decision that I wasn't going to play anymore, and there was this space of, okay, now what? What do I want to do? What do I want to do next? And trying to figure that out. And I ended up, I interviewed for some other opportunities, marketing and sales, and kind of fell into coaching, in the director of operations position at Butler. And I always say coaching is a calling, because I can't sit here and say, man, I grew up my whole life wanting to coach. It found me. I think that's many people probably have a similar testimony. And then on the coaching track, University of Iowa, we were there 2004 to 2007. We hit a Sweet 16 at Butler as an assistant coach. I went with Todd Licklider. He was National Coach of the Year. I joined him at Iowa. I was 27 years old and an assistant coach in the Big Ten level. And we got fired. We got let go in 2010. Things didn't go as planned. And there was a moment, similar, where there was no polo, there was no logo for a stretch there, and trying to, again, figure out what to do next. By that time, I was married and had two daughters. So now you have, more people depending on you in that situation, and being a third time here. So I've been there before, and I think I've learned, what I've kind of come to, Will, in that moment is, you can, as important as what to do next, it's who you're becoming in the process. And, when we got let go at Iowa, that was when I got saved and gave my life to the Lord, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and really got grounded and rooted stronger in my faith, and, let a lot of things go and move, and just kind of started to walk a different way with my wife and my children. And it led me to, Michigan, and we had some great runs there and things like that. But there was a piece about, what's next. Like I said, you're asking yourself important questions when I've been in those moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that we all have to ask ourselves those tough questions, especially um, in those spaces. Do you ask yourself who you are? Look in the mirror and ask yourself, who am I outside of what people see you as every day. We call each other coach, but we all are more than coaches. You're more than CEOs, supervisors, principals. Whoever's on this call, you're more than what your job title says you are. It's like Ash said, family man, Christian, fathers, husbands, and sometimes
Exactly.
we get over invested in what our careers are, over invested, and we're spending more time in that professional space than our personal space.
Exactly. And so I think, when I was there before in 2010, and I asked myself, the question, who am I? I landed on, first things first. I'm a child of God, right? And again, like I said, I had a wife and two daughters. I'm a husband. I'm a brother to a brother and two sisters, and a father, and so to live, to take some time and really think about how I was doing in those roles in my life, versus the coaching role. Am I living the way that I want to live in each of those aspects? And what I do is, I'm a basketball coach. And I love that, and I love pouring, like Ash said, pouring into young people and helping them grow and develop. and learn, key things about life through the game of basketball. And so, it became a lot clearer to me going through. And I think it's, when you're in that season, man, I try to learn, and I'm here again, try to learn all you can, so you can pass it along, whether it's to your players, to your students, to your, employees or athletes or whoever, but learn everything you can. Then you can pass it along and use your story to help someone else's story. And so I was fortunate, similar to Ash, to be able to reach out to others who have been in the situation and glean some things from them to help me, ask myself some of those important questions.
For sure. You know, Ash, Lavall, do you think you did a good job of separating your personal identity from your professional identity just throughout your entire career as an assistant, as a player, like you said, Val, as a head coach? Do you think you were able to separate that thing?
Well, one of the things, once I became a father, man, like that changed me, right? When we're young assistant coaches, you have all the time in the world to invest in recruiting and building relationships and just being available at all times. You know what I mean? And once I had children, man, like they, I changed. I know I did, and I love spending time with my kids, man, and I was intentional about making time. Even when times were challenging. And that's just some of the sacrifices that you have to make as a parent, right? Regardless of what your polo is, family gonna be right there with you the whole time. You know what I mean? So, I tried to do my best at that. You know, sometimes better than others, right? But, um, I said to myself, like, I'm not going to allow, um, my 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 job to impact my ability or impact my ability to be present with my kids, man. You know what I'm saying? Like my kids have to know that, they're important. Dad's always gonna be there for them, regardless. And with technology now, it's a beautiful thing, right? To FaceTime when you're on the road, do those things, man. So just being intentional with doing those things to keep you connected to your family helped me, right? Because I have young kids, 8 and 4, and the one thing that was challenging, is you get that time with the kids, work. My wife and I didn't have that alone time that you had when it was just us. You know what I mean? So we had to be intentional with date nights, and my wife was awesome, man. With sometimes she'll just hop on the couch and watch film with me, right? Or just fall asleep next to me and watch me watch film. You know what I mean? But we try to get that time, and it's something that you got to work at. You got to be intentional with, because you definitely need that balance, man. You definitely need that balance.
What would you say, Val?
Yeah. Well, I would. It'd probably be better off asking my wife or my daughters that question to see what they would say, and I'd be curious myself to know what they would say. I'd like to think that I did a good job, or did the best I can, but same as Ash just said, I don't know at all times. You get caught up, we all do. I don't care what profession you're working in, whether it's coaching or corporate America, or whatever you might be doing. We all get caught up in the rat race, and you get busy, and so you're trying to fight busy and as much as possible. And I like to think I did a decent job to do that. I do know this, man. Like I said, trying to be present when those moments were there, because it's demanding, the lifestyle. and I tell people, hey, coaching, it's a lifestyle. So my wife is my destiny. She's an absolute rock star, just in terms of her understanding and ability to work, to know what's needed and within our family, what our daughters need, what I need, and be there to support. I mean, I'm an unbelievable partner in life, and I think that's a huge help. I try to be more intentional as I've gotten, as years have gone on, and to make sure and be mindful I'm present. I worked with Jeff Meyer was an assistant coach. We were assistant coaches together at a couple stops at Butler and at Michigan, and I hired Jeff back here at Butler as an assistant coach to work with me when I got the head job. And he had, I remember him telling me years ago, he would when he pulled up into his driveway when he was a head coach, he had been a head coach at Liberty University for 16 years, that he would go pick a flower or a rose off the bush when he pulled up in his driveway, just to say, physically do something to say, okay, that role is over right now. I'm coach is done. I'm being dad right now. So doing something tangible to kind of transition himself to dad before he walked in the door at the house. And that was something that always stuck me. So I tried to never walk into the house on the phone. I wanted my attention for the first 30 minutes or however long, when I walked in the door, to not make it seem like there's anything more important than the people in my house at that time, and give them all of my attention walking in the door. Just try to be more intentional about things. And then when we took family vacations and did things like that, to really put the phone away, because the phone can get you distracted. So I'd like I said, you start to figure out what's more important, and trying to have an impact in your house, because you got a ton of kids that you're impacting in the coaching profession, but trying to make sure you get impacting your kids as much as more than anybody else.
For sure. And I think what you said earlier is you have to be intentional. And, you also said you might want to ask my spouse what does she think about that balance?
That was a good one, Val. That was a
Yeah,
good one.
I think you hit that on the head. I think I got lucky. The majority of my time as an assistant, me and my wife, we didn't have kids, and then as soon as I was able to become a head coach, um, we were able to have kids, and but also COVID was around, and so I was home more than normal. And I think during that time, I got used to me being home, and so once COVID started going away, and I started hitting the road a little bit more, she didn't understand, like, what was going on. And so for the people listening, whether that's in corporate America, I think what Coach Jordan is saying is we spend so much time in our professional lives. When we get home, we need to be able to still put that same energy into the people that really matter. Our families, our kids, our spouses, and give them the same attention and time as we give our players, or the people that are employees, or whoever, our bosses. The time and effort that we put into that, we need to put into our families also.
Yeah, and in college coaching, Will, it's like in any profession, you had a phone, so your email, you can constantly get buzzed and text and alerted and pinged, and next thing you know is bedtime, and you haven't had any interaction or conversation with your kids. So do not disturb feature on my phone, man, I've really come to enjoy using that button to make sure that I just block off. Like I said, being more intentional, because it can get you and just pull you away. That important call from that big recruit, and you feel like you can't not answer. I'm gonna use a double negative. Like you have to answer that call. And it might be in the middle of doing something, with my daughter in the middle of the living room floor, and So I just put the do not disturb. I don't even know the calls coming in now. Is one of the adjustments I made over time, so that I don't even feel it.
Nah, 100%, 100% right. We're kind of talking about, being over invested, under invested, our personal identity versus our professional identity. All of us have had an opportunity to be head coaches, and we have some other head coaches on the call tonight: Jamion Christian, Tavares Hardy. I saw Cliff Warren on earlier. What are some things, guys, we all should ask ourselves as we continue to grow in this profession and in this coaching profession and in leadership?
As you want that, or you want me to hit it?
Well,
that's a large question. Will, I would say, I would start with this. Will, you hit on it earlier, and you said something really critical is asking yourself, meaningful and uncomfortable questions. Again, I'm a believer of this, and it goes along with my faith walk. We're all invited to go on this journey to find our identity and figure out who we are. Most people don't, right? Because it gets uncomfortable. Because there's good sides to you and there's bad sides to you. God made us who we are in both ways, and there's this, there's this inner beauty that we all have within us, but there's also an inner brokenness that we have. Like we all have, and so when you say, what questions, I think that's an important thing that people is hard. It's a whole lot easier to just hop on Facebook and Instagram or turn on Netflix and not do the work of getting to know you, and ask yourself those questions. Who am I? What's really important to me? What do I value? What do I really want? Because a lot of times, we may be unconsciously living somebody else's life, because we thought that's what it's about, or somebody else's expectations. And so you got to have the courage to really dive into. And I've done a ton of that right here and now. In this moment, Will, in this season is, and we've talked about this before, but just diving into, yourself, because in the end, it's the best version of you is what we're trying to get to, and that healthier version of us, because whatever happens next, if you're not moving, it's not going to work out anyway. You're not going to be ready.
Ash, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, Val, I think you hit it on the head, man. I think, trying to figure out, what makes you happy, right? Is it, having the opportunity to coach at a high level? Is it just having the opportunity to coach in a place where you're close to your family and you have that dynamic? Like once you get into this business, you at times, I think we all, you forget why you started, right? And right now I'm in a position where I'm thinking about, man, like I remember when I was the gym rat, man. I was that dude that anybody in the city of Philadelphia wanted to get in the gym at any given time. I was the guy to call. You know what I mean? And it's like, all right, am I still that dude? You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, I'm not. Like over time, I've become something else, but that's still a significant part of who I am. Like regardless of what's going on, like I love the sound of the ball bouncing. You know what I mean? Like I love being in the gym, right? So there's certain things that may change over time, but you get a chance to sit back and think like, all right, who am I? Why do I do this? I just love the game of basketball. Been around it my whole life. This has been my calling, right? I didn't choose this profession; it chose me. and everything that comes along with that. You know what I mean? So, when you get in the position that we're in now, it's like, okay, what of the things that come along with this business do you really value, right? And just try to be intentional about putting yourself in a situation where your desires and the things that you really want to accomplish, um, you know, equal, the situation that you're able to work in.
And as I think you just said, you can't separate, because culturally, it's like, what's the first, when you get out to a social event or an outing, especially, what's the first thing, maybe not the first thing, but one of the first things people ask you, right? So what do you do?
Yeah.
So we do for a living. And you get there quick. And that's our culture and our society, wants to talk about what you do. But what you do, I believe, is Joyce Meyer. I don't know if you guys listen to Joyce Meyer, but she always says, your who comes before your do. So who are you? Nobody asks you, like, so what do you believe in? So what do you value? When you're at a social event, what do you do? And typically, if you're coaching, if you're in a visible position, they may know already. But even, my wife, she's used to be a pharmaceutical sales rep for many years. She's, as we have more children, she works from home, but then she's out at events and, with other business professionals, and she gets the question, so what do you do? And she, I'm raising 3 kids. That's the most important work we have. Right. So, but what you do flows from out of who you are, like I said. So those are when you have time and space, you can reflect and ask yourself some of those questions. Who am I? What's important to me? What do I really want? Questions that what are my strengths? What am I really good at? And maybe ask some people around you that you've been, working alongside, what they feel like, those things are. What are my blind spots? But then trying to line up, like what I've been able to do in this season, Will and Ash, I know you have, like I said, and we've talked about it, is get centered around the things that are most important. My family and learning. I like reading and my faith, making up time in the morning, and then building your days around that. I heard Steve Wojciechowski, who we talk about that, and he's been in the situation, but centering your days, because when you're on the treadmill or on the hamster wheel, like that becomes the center of your day somehow. I think we've all fallen into that, right? And the next thing you know, you're not doing all the things that you really want to be doing and that you should be doing. So getting back to, what is my purpose? And like I've landed just saying, hey, my purpose is using my gifts to shed God's light on the places that He's given me access to, right? And that's been through coaching. But knowing that and getting a clear answer in my head on that, what do I feel like that purpose is?
You're right, man, and it's deciding what's important to you. Those core values that we give our team. Do you have core values for your life, for you, for your family, to be centered around? And I think when you're not representing any university or corporate space, that those things are important at that time, to be able to reflect back on. And before we go into this next segment, a couple of things to write down just to make sure that your identity hasn't become combined or enmeshed with your career. You can ask yourself a couple of these questions. How much do you think about your job outside of the office? And I know coaches are probably on here like we think about it, 24/7. How would you describe yourself? If somebody asked you and Lavall kind of touched on that, somebody walks up to you and asks, what do you do? Is coaching the first thing that comes to mind? Is that the first thing that's going to come out of your mouth? Where do you spend most of your time? Do you
Well,
have hobbies?
that's
Go ahead.
going right there, Coach. I heard this many years ago. So if you really want to know what's important to you, look at where you spend your time and look at where you spend your money.
Of course, right?
And you'll be able to answer that question. And so yeah, when you said that, that that just hit a nerve because I remember hearing that.
And then, the last question would be, how would you feel if you could no longer continue in your profession? How distressing would that be to you? And I know we don't think about those things, but I think those are things we need to think about before it just happens one day. We always say in coaching, you get hired to get fired. And so some of those things are some questions that you need to think about at some point, just to have a thought process in that space. And so we're going to go into this. I'm going to call this the last media timeout, and I'm going to do this with all the guests that I have, and kind of run through a couple of questions. I'll start with Ash. Ash, just kind of briefly give us answers to these questions, man, and give some insight. The first question is going to be, why did you become a coach? Why did you become a coach?
Well, honestly, Will, I became a coach because I had to stop playing in college. I got diagnosed with a heart condition going into my junior year, and I stayed on scholarship. And during that time, my last 2 years of school, I just wanted to stay around the game. I was a captain of our team, so I stayed in the gym with my teammates, and I started coaching AAU and started to develop a little following in terms of training kids in the Philadelphia area. So it was really the epitome of, like, God chose my path for me, man. Like, I didn't choose it. And I grew up in a basketball family, right? So it was a natural transition for me after having my career ended, because of a heart condition.
For sure. Best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received was to stay even keel. Get too high on yourself. Don't get too low. Stay even keel. Stay right in the middle. Best advice I ever received. It's simple, but in the end, it's the best advice I ever received.
We all need that as coaches. We need that advice. Trust me on that one. Next question. What are some of the habits that have helped you become a successful basketball coach?
Just asking the players, what makes them just having a feel for what the players want, what they need, what's important to them. One of the things that I do with my players every year is I ask them what their goals are, right? And I did it as an assistant and a head coach. Tell me what your goals are. Give me your 3 goals. And now you give me those 3 goals every day. I'm holding you accountable, right? So developing the relationship with my players where I would try to show them that I was equally as invested in their success as I was my own, and how it went hand in hand. I think it's important with this generation of kids now because everybody has goals, everybody has aspirations, but we're the ones that have the experience to help them get to where they're trying to go. But it's important that they know that we're committed to helping them get there.
That's really good advice. I would say, John Thompson, we played Georgetown a couple of years ago, and God bless his soul. That was something that he spoke to me about, just listening to the kids, listening to your players, to get an insight on, what they think. Sometimes as coaches, we try to block what our players, the information that they're giving us, we try to block that out. But that advice, having to listen to them and kind of see where their head is also very important. This next question, um, Ash, if you could start your career over tomorrow and you had access to all the knowledge you have today, what would you attack in your career? How would you attack your career as a mid-major assistant coach?
The one thing that I would have done at an earlier stage in my career is I would have really intentionally given myself responsibilities of, like, the director of operations, um, video coordinator. I think it's essential in the game today that you're able to do a lot of those things on your own, right? So now, you give yourself more versatility and flexibility in regards to being able to accept certain positions, right? I was lucky. And the game is completely different today than it was when we were coming up, right? So, and I was extremely fortunate that I was able. My first job in college, I was a student assistant, but my first job post graduation, I was an assistant coach on the road recruiting. I never had to be a video coordinator or GA or ops guy. So, had had I had the opportunity to do it all over again, I would have been intentional with, just making time to learn all of those responsibilities. And again, I think I had a really, really successful run as an assistant coach. I was very fortunate to work for some great guys. The most important thing I did was pour into the kids, though. Like, when I was an assistant, I wasn't thinking about being a head coach. I wasn't thinking about, you know, strategically doing stuff to become a head coach. I was just pouring into the players that I coached, man. Trying to help those guys become the best that they could be within our system, developing them to be good players in our system for my head coach. And I always felt like if I do that, we'll have good results. If we have good results, I'll get what I want. And I was fortunate enough to get that, right? So, um, you know, I don't really have many regrets. But the one thing that I would do differently is I would try to invest more time in some of the other responsibilities outside of just recruiting and player development.
That's big time information because a lot of times, people get into this business and, obviously recruiting is, it's like, I want to, I can recruit, I can do this, I can get players, but there's so much more that goes into this business to allow you to be a successful head coach when you get there than just being able to recruit. Val, coming to you, man, why did you become a coach? What was the reason why you became a coach, Val?
That's a great question, Will. What drew me in? So when I like I told you, I didn't know I wanted to coach. I got in the director of operations chair. I was fortunate to get the opportunity, and what drew me in that role, to Ash's point, you couldn't get on the road recruiting. You can't get on the floor during practices. You can be in the fly on the wall in the meetings, and I was on the staff with Todd Lickliter, like I said, he was coach of the year, and Matthew Graves, who became head coach, Brad Stevens, who's obviously well documented as at Butler and the Boston Celtics, and Jeff Mercer. I was just in the room taking notes. But what drew me in was the play, mentoring the players. That's what you can do in that role outside of all the logistics that you're responsible for in the program, was mentoring the players. And so for me, it was just having a positive impact, on the lives of people, and particularly young people.
Great information, man. I mean, hopefully there's a lot of young coaches or coaches on this line. This, Coach Ash and Coach Lavall both mentoring players, man, pouring into guys, making sure guys are ready, to be coached by the head coach. Val, best advice you've ever received?
Whoa. Best advice I've ever received: don't forget who you truly work for. As a head coach, I had a spiritual mentor, a guy named Glenn Korboff, who was worked with the Nations of Coaches. He worked with the Crusaders. He worked with a lot of different organizations, and he was around our program when I was a player. He was the ops guy. And then when I was a head coach, he was still around in the Indianapolis area in Butler. And he said to me, 2 years ago, we were really struggling. And, I was a bit stressed out. And, we would talk every other Friday morning, just to recenter myself. And he said, don't forget God is your boss. You don't work for the AD. You don't work for, there's 9,000 people in the stands and all that. Don't forget who your real boss is.
Man, that's powerful stuff. Powerful stuff.
That's big time.
That's powerful stuff, man. I mean, and when you're in these positions, head coaches, assistant coaches, at the highest level, you're going so fast that you don't slow down to think about things like that. If you're not careful, that rat race will get you. You can't slow down enough to think about things like that. What you just said was so powerful. I don't know if the people understand what you said and how powerful that was. But Val, this next question, if you could start your career over tomorrow and you had access to all the knowledge you have today, how would you attack your career as a mid-major head coach?
Oh man, the good thing about having experience, you can't like fast track experience. So it's the good thing about having experience. And anybody listening, well, I met with Coach Jim Boylan, and I don't know if people on the call probably know who Jim is, but he had recently been let go from the Chicago Bulls. But he said to me some great words of wisdom. They said, you're still right there where you have energy and you have experience. A lot of times you got the energy, but you don't have the experience. And then other times you have the experience, but you may not have the energy anymore. So I'm sure there's people on the call that, you have the energy and the experience. And so I would say, how would I approach it? I would definitely know who's on my personal advisory board. Yeah, right. Because stuff's going to happen. I might call Will Jones now or Ash Howard now to talk about things that I can't talk to everybody about, to keep some of the stuff, making sure that I'm reaching out to those people. I think keeping it simple in terms of who you want to be around, and that's based on who you are, right? As we talked about earlier, and what you value, and keeping that simple, and then who you're recruiting and what you're doing. One of the things I loved about Ash's career at Villanova and watching him coach, man, they were pretty simple. They were really good at simple things at the highest level. And then creating, I think I improved. So if I was to go back and start, really creating those free, safe spaces where I thought I got better over time, because I love feedback. We all do, I think. Creating those feedback loops that you can, like Ash was talking about, with your players, with your staff, of I want to know, what am I doing well? What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What do we need to? So having those loops be safe and free, and then just reminding yourself, like, to focus on the road ahead in a positive way, and work towards your potential. Not getting caught. Race car drivers, I read this, aren't taught to look at the wall. Right? They focus on the road. And there's a lot of times you get distracted with your, where you're headed. Especially when I was younger, be more focused on the road ahead and how we can get to our highest potential, and not worry about, the other things. I think lastly, and this is a long-winded answer, but it would be to let go of certain things, like let go of past mistakes, let go of people's opinions, and don't feel like you have to defend yourself, all the time. People are going to say stuff. There's a few people that really, really matter, that, you care about, if they're really proud of you and they support you. And kind of let go of what the other people have to say.
Great answer. And, we got about, a minute left. I want to appreciate everybody for logging on. I think tonight, Some unbelievable information was given, and we do a ton of X and O's and podcasts and spaces where we're getting coaches paths and how do they get to point A to point B and how to be a head coach. But I think what we're going to invest in this space is some of the real questions and some of the real things you deal with during this career, during and anybody in a high stressful job where your career can kind of take over who you are. We're going to talk about some things more so in this space that's going to try to help people improve in all areas of life. But before we get out of here, man, the book I would recommend that you read, The Six Fundamentals of Success by Stuart Levine. The Six Fundamentals of Success by Stuart Levine, a book that I read a couple years ago that added a lot of value to me. If you have anything to say that we can help improve this space, please put it in my DMs. I really appreciate everybody from being on. Look out for the next one, probably the beginning of the new year, whether it be here on a regular podcast platform or here on Twitter Spaces. Again, I appreciate everybody logging on. Thank you.